Hi, this is WVSD TV, and I'm Dr. Carolyn Gordon, host of Consider This. Our guest for today is just the remarkable, amazing artist, Dr. Alphonso Sanders, who's with us today to talk about not only the B.B. King Symposium, but music in general and how it impacts the world. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Dr. Carolyn Gordon. As I now know, I'm glad that I'm still recognized at the university, leaving a symposium here that meant a lot to me from its inception, based on the fact that I spent a lot of years around. We call him Mr. King, around B.B. King. He was very fond of education. He always mentioned the fact that he never got a chance to go to school, but he learned a lot because he traveled the world, which is probably the greatest education that anybody could ever get. A part of reading books and imagining, your life in other spaces. But B.B. got a chance to live his life in those spaces. Spent nearly, 90. About 360 days per year plus, and visited about 90 countries a year at some point in his life. And if you attend the B.B. King Museum, you'll see that history has been marked and identified quite well. And much of what B.B. King desired to take place in terms of presenting his history is noted there in that museum. And as far as this symposium is concerned, when B.B. died, I contacted Robert Terrell, who, of course, was working for the museum and still does, and now is the deputy director for the museum. But at that time, I just called him as a friend and said, I would like to do something. And so we came up with an idea about a symposium, something I kind of put forth. And there was a resolution written when he died that the university gave to the B.B. King estate, which was, I guess, to be shared with his family. And so we did that, and then, of course, it started in the year 15. And I had no problems. Well, in some way I was trying to avoid dealing with some basic bureaucracy that happens in universities.
Right.
So I thought it would be good if we could start it without too many questions, too many concerns about how it would get done, how it would be funded. So I called a lot of musicians, beginning with Bobby Rush and Denise LaSalle and on down the line. Otis Clay was alive at the time, and all the musicians out of Chicago and other places. They came. A lot of them came on their own dime, and so we were able to get the first one off the ground. And then the second one began the quest of funding. The challenges of funding the rest of the symposiums, but we were able to get grants and from resources that led us from one victory to another.
Excellent.
And so here we are, number 10.
Here we are, number 10. I actually came to Valley the first year, 2015.
Oh, okay.
And
wow.
so I remember very well, and not only was impressed, but also it invited you into another world that has been part of our world. That it's kind of like we just stood out and watched it. We knew of B.B. King, we knew of the blues because we've been in those blues situations. But in bringing the symposium to us, what it did was invite us to take a look at not only the story behind the blues, but how the blues has impacted the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's an important thing. Mississippi makes a lot of money in tourism based on the history of the blues. Black Americans have contributed a lot to not only Mississippi, but to the United States and to the world.
To the world.
Based on this simple formula called the blues itself. We know that even though it was not embraced immediately by the Southern culture, when blacks began this journey, this musical journey, but as it left Europe and returned, under the auspices of young bands like the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, which are probably the most popular, the music became notarized of a sort, and now it's an important factor to the history of not only Mississippi, but like I said, the South.
Mm-hmm.
What I am most proud of is that the symposium pulled people together from communities around the state of Mississippi. In that first year, when we put it out, we had people coming from other countries. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it was a bigger development than we anticipated. The following years, of course, began to prove that people would come to sit down and discuss this music and the life of B.B. King as it relates to the music. And so we've had quite a few things. Many people from university settings came, shared on panel discussions. We've had lots of professional musicians, you know, to share on panel discussions. And this year, we discussed the possibility of just getting young people to talk about their inheritance into this music and what they're doing today with it, and what does the future look like, you know.
I think that's an excellent. I think that's an excellent. This is a brilliant idea to have the legacy one here, to have this one this year, especially in light of what you're saying, because not just with music, it seems like anything we do become legitimized by the others as we excel. A good example, hip hop at the Olympics.
Yeah, well, these histories keep
And break,
unfolding. Yeah,
right,
these
and
histories keep unfolding.
break dancing, or what do they call it? They and you had the lady from Australia. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah,
whole-
I saw quite a bit of what was going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that most importantly, as it relates to the state of Mississippi itself, there should be a broader acknowledgement as it relates to a more, I guess, a more defined acknowledgement of what this music really is. We're headed toward a broader perspective of it, because it's reached around the world. But I think sometimes within the state of Mississippi, many of the Black American musicians are getting left out of the presentations that exist, because some of those guys are lying dormant, you know, in the state. They're not doing as much anymore.
Okay.
And the ones who are doing something is based on the fact that they have gained some popularity. But many of the people who helped build popularity of the music, sometimes they are not acknowledged enough, you know.
So the symposium here, the B.B. King Symposium on September 5th, theme this year is the next generation of blues. How does that relate and impact to our upcoming youth and others, young and young at heart, who will be affected by the blues of the future?
Well, it is happening. It's just that sometimes we don't have any control over how things morph when they start to develop. Younger musicians stand a chance because the industry likes phenomenons. They call them young phenoms, and so they seem to have a glare about them that people can use to market things. And the older you get, and the less, I guess, the less involved you might become, because marketing is a big part of staying alive. And there are a lot of artists today that are still living who are at the top of the charts during their time, you know. And so in the blues world, it's even more difficult than it is with pop music. But there seems to be, at least, as I've explained many times, in the blues world, there at least seems to be a passing of the torch among the Black American musicians. And now that there are far more white musicians, American blues artists involved, even more blues musicians from around the world. Like the top two places where blues is most recognized is France and down in the Brazil area.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
They just they love it. They put themselves in places, they start festivals, they start acknowledgments, they start things, and they find that people will come from around the world and create vacation spots based on blues
Wow.
festivals.
Do you think it's because of the stories that the blues advocate, or do you think it's the music, a combination, or the spirit, or the people that sing it?
Well, you're saying it all.
Yeah.
It's a part.
Yeah.
It's all of it. Has something to do with all of it. The spirit of the music is what is most talked about.
The spirit of the
Yeah,
music.
spirit of the people. You know, where the music comes from. And then, of course, Brazil is closely related to Africa.
Right.
France is not that far removed from the African continent.
Right.
And all of
So then, do you think a musician or someone can survive, an artist can survive on just singing blues music?
Well, surviving on music, period, is hard.
Okay,
whether
right.
it's any genre of blues or not. But in terms of the blues world, yeah, it's very difficult. Yeah, because you're going to have more challenges to make a music that's not considered pop music. You know, it's not a popular genre. So you have to find places, number one, who can support your musical performances, you know, and so we got festivals that exist.
Right.
We're getting ready for
Right.
the Delta Blues Festival, one of the oldest in the state of Mississippi, in Greenville, Mississippi. You know, we got our own Al White that's here, you know, faculty at Mississippi Valley State, who's been hosting a grassroots festival there. You know, in Duck Hill.
In Duck Hill.
Yeah, and so you know, that's a kind of a dichotomy between some of the youngest of the festivals that started and the oldest one that started. And then in between, you know, you got Duck Holmes down there at the Blue Front Cafe.
Okay.
That's doing his festival annually. You got other people who are starting to put festivals together. Clarksdale started some years ago making statements about all of the history that's presented from Clarksdale, Mississippi,
Right.
beginning with the legendary Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf and Ike and Tina Turner, and on down the line, where this seemingly an incubator, you know, of a lot of things coming out of this history. What I find though interesting about Mississippi Valley State University, it is not only recognized as up from a cotton patch, but then you got the birth of B.B. King and a stone's throw away from the university in Berkeley, and then you've got the making of B.B. King's life in Indianola, Mississippi, to become his home, and now is the founding city of the B.B. King Museum, and then all of the other aspects of this university that's tied into the history of the blues. Not enough probably is said about it, but even when I was in school here in the late 70s, I noticed that blues men were coming on this campus, but I don't think the recognition was high enough that people didn't understand it. I don't think the university understood at that time how important this would be to the development of blues history.
But do you think, in some, lack of a better word, crazy sense, the blues is, even though we embrace it, it also scares us?
I'm not sure about scare. You know, you say scares us. Like,
Well, what I mean is just like the power of what blues is, and even coming on the campus, not that really recognized, because you can dance to it, but it's a different dance.
Oh yeah,
you can sing to it, but it's a different song.
The fear has been something that was instilled years ago.
Or even the stories being told.
Well, the stories are the truth.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
and the way people felt. You got truth in most music, and people will hear it different ways. Sometimes it can be political truths that musicians will throw out, and sometimes it's love stories, heartaches and breakups and makeup and all that kind of stuff that goes into the industry. You got music talking about drug scenes that's been prevalent throughout ages, you know, and so, you know, cultural wars, the whole things about society, you know, developments, some of the struggles in societal movements and so forth. And then you got this long living cloud that hangs over the blues that stems from its separation from black people and their belief in religion and so
Right.
forth. So you got to understand that when black people started to find a sense of freedom, as it was told, there was still a dependency. We had a freedom of not being called slaves, but there was a dependency on the American fiber as it was constructed, that you still had to depend on white resources. And music was one of those things that when black people got together, they spent quite a bit of time the weekend enjoying themselves after a long week of labor. And so sometimes for the fear of not getting back to work on Monday in sound form or fashion, black churches and black preachers were told that the blues itself and the frolicking and all the nighttime life of black people through the weekend was going to be the most sinful thing that the black people could do. And so the blues got thrown in that mix, saying that it was the devil's music, right? And so now, since all episodes in the development of black music history, each one was passed down and say, there's something wrong with that music. There was something wrong with jazz because it was developing, but around spaces that they thought black people were demeaning to the culture of black people. So black people would put it down. Ragtime piano, black people put it down. Stride piano, they put it down, and other people picked it up. And then black people now were sought after to say, teach us more about this thing that we found or we discovered. And in many ways, a lot of times the musicians had moved on. And there's not enough development or ties between the blues music, which B.B. King tried to make evident, telling, because if you think about B.B. King's life, he recorded with nearly everybody you could think of. His most popular recordings was with a young white group out of U2. Where are they from? Not Ireland. Where is U2 from? I can't think of it. But anyway, people can look that up if they're listening. But one of his highest level of performances and most attended audiences was with that band. Because he always bridged the gap between the music, the blues music, and popular music. He recorded with the Jazz Crusaders years ago. He recorded with people from other countries, and so you got recordings. B.B. King has recordings that people have never listened to. But in other countries, people might be more familiar with those than some Americans would be. He was on stages. I mean, they pulled him back in when the guys realized that they'd become very famous, like the Rolling Stones pulled him back on stage. He got a chance to hang out around Paul McCartney and with the Beatles. Everybody respected him. He was revered. And the blues found its way back into the American fiber because of him being endorsed as the chairman of the board, as he was called, which later translated into the king of the blues.
Absolutely. I think you hit on a couple of things. You two from Ireland. So it gives hint.
So you verified it from Ireland?
I verified. They're from Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah, I thought Ireland, but
But the whole thing I think is interesting because you hit upon something when you mentioned the religious aspect or the theological influence of our cultural norms and stories. People wouldn't go hear blues and don't want to go to hip hop and all the other stuff because it's called the devil's music.
Well, B.B. said it himself. As a gospel singer, he said when I crossed over to blues, he said the only thing I basically changed was "Oh Lord" to "Oh Baby."
Exactly.
Oh Lord, I love you. Oh baby, I love you.
Seriously, or I won't complain. I've been lied on. I've been cheated. I've been mistreated. But I won't complain.
All those things that we think about. But if you think about culturally speaking, there's nothing more important than the spiritual journey of any society. And so when people drop their spiritual journeys, I think they're dropping the development of humanity as a whole. But we do know that one of the highest level of cultural I would say, demeaning cultural statements that were put forth when it came to Black American music, especially the blues. It created a big gulf between our spiritual journey and where we were coming from and where we were headed. And so putting this back in place today, you know, I think it's highly important. I think that's one of the values of having a symposium on a university campus, such as Mississippi Valley State University. And I'm very proud that I've worked here for 15 years at least, and developing a symposium of this magnitude could be one of the developments that keep this university connected with the world abroad.
You know what?
Yeah.
And it contribute to it.
Yeah,
Right?
no,
Okay, so
contribute.
in case anyone's wondering, again, the symposium, there is no charge. It is free.
It's
There
free.
is a pre-lecture on September the 4th. And then there is the symposium all day on September the 5th here at Mississippi Valley State campus in the Social Sciences Auditorium. And we invite people to come. I want to go back, though, because I want to hit this religious thing one more time in case somebody listening thinking that they're going to sin against God if they show up here. But this is one thing I know. And I'm going to preach for a moment from the book of Esther. Just because God is not mentioned does not mean God is not in the story. Look at the book of Esther. God is not mentioned, but God is all in that story. And I think we need to go back and reclaim some of our culture and our stories, even if they're not sang in the church, even if God is not mentioned in them, and even if the beat does not hit the 2/4 or the 4/4 or whatever beat it needs to hit in order to be considered sanctified.
Well, the blues music is no different from singing Happy Birthday.
Absolutely.
It's a social song that's passed down through generations, right? And now it's in all kind of languages. Everybody sings the American.
Everybody sings. Everybody.
The,
And Amazing Grace.
Yeah, I said it's
You know what I'm
actually a
saying?
European melody, but I'm saying all of the things that we think we know, very seldom do we even challenge ourselves to find out if what we know is real or whether we know has truth or value to it. And so we pass down fables. And sometimes, many times,
Fables
spiritual,
and fairy
many times, many things we call spiritual understandings, they are rooted in fables too, you know.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and so I would challenge people, you know, try to connect with histories. And one of the things that I'd like to say too is there's a word called ignorance, and the root of that word is based in ignore. And so to ignore information is to be uneducated. Education comes from a word that says that is a root word that says you must encounter light, you know, in order to take you to the next space of knowing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if you don't understand what the word education means, then you will ignore learning.
Right.
Right? And many people who ignore learning are ignorant people.
Because
so-
they're voluntarily ignoring.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than a volunteer, ignorant person, right?
Right.
So we appreciate you so much. Again, the B.B. King Symposium again this year is September the 5th here on Mississippi Valley State's campus. And in case you want to put a face to this wonderful voice you heard in Dr. Sanders, he will be here.
Yeah, I'm hoping to be here. I hope we get a chance to communicate and work, you know, together on some future things too, because a lot of things will be discussed, and maybe we'll see. I know Al will be involved because, you know, he's going to have his team of students here, and of course, since you're over mass communications now, and we're looking forward to communicate with Dr. Gordon.
Thank you again so much, Dr. Sanders. You've given us a lot to think about, and my heart's petition is that you will plan to come back again, and so that we can talk some more.
I hope so.
Okay. This has been WVSD TV. I'm Dr. Carolyn Gordon, and you have been watching Consider This.